Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. It's Teresa here, and today I am participating in a YouTube hop for the Traci Designs creative team. We are working with the brand new Weekender collection for this hop, and this is a absolutely stunning travel collection designed for faraway travel, for close to home travel, and so I'm excited to start this layout and share the process with you. And so as I was printing out some of the embellishments and word art and things, I came upon these, the Go See Do words, and they kind of reminded me of New York City and the subway. And I have a great story about that. We took our kids to New York in, I don't know, 2012. I need to confirm that date. And the subway was one of their favorite things about New York City. It was really fun to see them just have a good time. So I thought that I would do a layout highlighting these embellishments. What I did was I blew them up a little bit. They're a little bit bigger than what they're supposed to be. And then I printed out 3 photos to go with those embellishments. And so one of them is just a regular train. It's not part of the subway. And then the 2 boys that day in the seats. And then another photo I printed out is at Grand Central, and it's very blurry. There's just a lot of activity going on in this photo, and I liked it for that because it sort of captures that energy and that vibe of the subway. And so that's the story that I want to tell. The other thing that I wanted to use for this layout was this ticket paper. It also repeats the flip words and has stamps and tags and things like that on it. And I printed it out in 2 ways. One, because I wanted to see what it looked like printed on regular, this is matte photo paper, so on regular matte cardstock. And then I also wanted to see what it looked like printed on transparency. This is a regular office transparency. It has a little white strip across the bottom that helps it feed through the printer, and it has a texture on one side, and that texture is what the ink holds onto, and they actually look really cool together. And so what I want to do is just sort of cut out parts of this to use as my background, and then layer some individual pieces on top of this. One, to hide the adhesive, because that's always a concern for using transparency and vellum pieces. So I think you'll like seeing that part of the process. And then I'm also gonna adhere the whole layout onto this yellow pattern paper. There's some little dust and things on it. So I think that's going to look cool behind it, like that, and sort of bring out a little more of that yellow and create a really vibrant, happy layout. I hope you enjoy watching the process, and I'll come back at the end and sort of talk about how it all ended up. Okay, so getting started here, I went ahead and trimmed down the white cardstock for the size that I wanted so that the yellow border would show around it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and glue these words, the Go See Do, down. And that helps me to know where they're going and where I can make my cuts for this transparency paper. And you may be asking yourself, why do this like this? And what I was trying to do was to get as many sections of paper as I could intact to make it a little bit easier to adhere everything down. And I also originally had this idea to do the strips going across, but I realized that it would probably be a little bit more visually interesting to trim some areas around each of the strips, just to have sort of one kind of a visual line going from the bottom left to the top right. And so the way that I think I'm going to achieve that is by doing a little bit more towards the lower left side, gravitating to the top, and having the strips kind of widen in the center where the go see do and where the photos are, and then having them kind of narrow back down at the top and bottom. I think that'll make sense as it goes along. After I kind of got the basic strips in place of how I wanted to use them, I'm figuring out where to put my photo and kind of gluing everything back down in more of a permanent state. And so I get asked a lot, how do you deal with the adhesive on the backs of transparencies? And it differs. Sometimes it depends on how vibrant the print is on the transparency, and sometimes you can hide your adhesive directly behind whatever is printed on your transparency. I found that for this pattern paper, the dots, I use dot adhesive, and they barely show. And, you know, I think that it's okay to have a little bit of adhesive showing behind it. I may resent that, or I may not like that over the years. I don't know. We'll see. But I think whatever helps you, whatever helps you get the layout done is what you should do. And so I did a combination here of the adhesive runner and then trimming out some of the pieces from the cardstock and using those to hide that adhesive as well. And so I think there now on that do row, you can see a little bit better how I'm shaping out the elements on the page to create the final layout that you'll see. And that's just kind of, I don't know, choosing interesting shapes, trying to just make it look like something that you can take a few minutes to absorb what's happening, so that you have kind of more to look at and it's a little bit more intriguing to the eye, I guess. I'm still trying to work out this photo. I thought about having it go off the white cardstock, but reverse that, and I think that it looks pretty good right there, almost in the center, but off to the right there. And it becomes a bit of a focal point, and also the strategic location next to C is kind of fun, because that way the word C kind of directs you straight to the photo. Look at this. Here's the main point of the layout. Here's the photo. Here's what I really want you to see as the primary focal point. And it's also a very simple way of accomplishing that. There's not a lot of quote-unquote dimensional embellishments. In fact, this is probably one of the flattest layouts that I've ever made, but those words, the go, see, do, are what help make that achievable. So that's a little side tip there for you if you're looking to use fewer embellishments, especially on the more masculine layouts. I'm usually a champion of throwing all the things at it, and I think that just using this pattern paper by itself provides tremendous visual interest without doing a lot of bulky embellishments. And that seems weird to say because these are all embellishments. They're all stickers too in the sticker pack. So you can achieve this that way too. But this kind of made it a little bit easier, I think. So I'm kind of just working out the final details. This is kind of what I ended up with, and I'm really liking how the edges have this sort of, oh, the word just left my brain. They have this sort of staggered effect. And so there's a little bit of white space here on that white cardstock that you can just let your eye rest for a minute. And that helps to bring you into what the focus is of the layout too. Just a little design speak for you. I'm continuing here just to make sure that everything is adhered down, that it's pretty safely attached. You could also attach these with staples or your tiny attacher. But I like my tape runner. And I think that those other little sticker, the other pattern paper on the cardstock will help to conceal some of that adhesive as well. It'll just be, my next step will just be a matter of figuring out which ones do I want to cover. Or not really cover, I'm just adding a little bit of a different look to those elements. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I'm using a combination. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not doubling up the embellishments and going back and filling in. There was kind of a thicker white line here than what I was hoping for, but I think it all worked out in the end. And so that's the important thing, that you're happy with how it turns out. Some of them turned out to be kind of little, and that's fun. And then some of them are singles, and some of them are groupings. And it's totally just flying by the seat of my pants a little bit. None of this was really pre-thought out. It's just sort of how it came to be. And I think there's tremendous value in that. That way you can sort of be inspired by what I've done. And so I'm just kind of cleaning off here a little bit and move into the next phase, where I go ahead and trim these little pieces down. And I'm just gonna cut out the cardstock and glue them directly on top. I thought about using pop dots to raise these up, and you definitely could use pop dots for the dimension of it, but I just decided to keep it pretty flat and pretty simple here, and that works too. Just a side note, when you're printing these, I mostly printed the same section of pattern paper, just on 2 different formats. I pull up the pattern paper in Photoshop, print it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet at full size, so it's still the 12 by 12 scale. That's just to let you know how that worked out. And that way I felt like I had a good representation of the pattern paper, and I had some choices for layering up to get what I needed to cover. And in the end, I didn't cover all of the adhesive. I think that's a fine choice. This process took a little bit longer than what I thought it would. Probably because I trimmed trimmed some of those pieces individually and pieced it back together. And that's fine. But by this point, I was kind of getting ready to, I was ready to be done with it and call it done on it. I had to go and come back to it several times. And so that kind of wears on you a little bit. But it was so much fun to play with these embellishments and see this layout come together. It's definitely different than anything I feel like I've ever done before, and I love when a new collection inspires you in that way. And I think that that's what the Weekender kit will help you accomplish. As a last touch, I needed to do a bit of journaling and find somewhere for my date stamp. I also just added this little word strip right there at the photo. I think that's another way to point that out, just to bring your eye to that space without being overly complicated. And then I thought I would use this round journal spot. And that led me to believe that I should probably do some other circle embellishments and maybe just add a couple of other little miscellaneous shapes to the page. I threw out the miscellaneous shapes idea, but I did hang on to adding a couple of circles and making the space for the journaling with that little orange circle. And so what I'm doing is using some of the circle bits and some of the half circle bits just to round out. It ends up that it rounds out those edges a little bit and shakes things up. And then I'm going to trim the little journal spot in half. Just thinking here about some other ideas, or if there's anything that might fit horizontally in any of these rows. That could be a possibility too, if that inspires you. But in the end, the orange circle wins out after a lot of deliberation. And so I'm going to trim it in half and put the top half of it up at the top, or put half of it up at the top here over the go word. That caused me to trim down a little more of the pattern paper, and that's fine. And then make the room for the journaling up there and a little bit of room down here. And that sort of creates a little bit of a parentheses here on the layout. So my words here down at the bottom, and then where we are and the date up at the top, I'm going to use one of my trusty roller date stamps. And we went back a few years to 2013 here in this layout. So, gosh, a decade ago. And this is a great day to have this memory in the books. So I'm going to come back and chat with you a little bit, and I'll see you there. Okay, so that completes the layout. Just a couple of changes I did. One, I only included one of the photos, and I think that sort of helps that photo stand out more on the page. And then I also added a couple of little round elements so that I could use one of the round labels. I cut it in half for a little bit of journaling. And I think that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you will check the links down below for the other participants in the hop today, and check and see the great inspiration from the Traci Reed Designs team. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.